In the modern age, where healing and spirituality have become visible, shareable, and often monetized, it's not uncommon to encounter a version of ourselves that appears healed while still being deeply fragmented beneath the surface. This is what John Welwood called spiritual bypassing, a term describing the use of spiritual ideas, language, and practices to avoid dealing with unresolved emotional wounds, developmental trauma, or uncomfortable psychological truths. Spiritual bypassing isn't always conscious. Most people don't set out to deceive others or themselves. Rather, it emerges as a protective strategy, a way to maintain identity and order when the deeper psychological terrain feels too overwhelming or unstructured to navigate directly. Many of us were raised in systems that rewarded achievement, performance, or conformity. When we enter the spiritual path, we may carry those same psychological imprints with us, unconsciously constructing a spiritual persona that serves the same function: to gain approval, to feel special, or to create a sense of belonging. The outward signs of progress, meditation routines, carefully curated affirmations, vocabulary rooted in awakening or alignment, may not reflect actual inner integration. They may instead represent the need to be seen as better or above one's earlier pain, even if that pain hasn't been fully metabolized. The question isn't whether you've learned the right words or adopted the right rituals. The question is, what's underneath all of that? What are you still unwilling to feel? What part of you are you still working to hide, even from yourself? To discern whether you're engaged in genuine healing or simply enacting a performance of healing, it helps to slow down and observe the motivations behind your actions. Are your spiritual practices anchored in a desire to connect with your core self and humanity? Or do they serve as a means to avoid discomfort, maintain appearances, or reinforce a particular identity? If you find that your sense of calm disappears the moment you're not in control of your environment, that may be a sign that your peace is conditional rather than embodied. If you feel intense anxiety when your curated image is disrupted, or if you can speak eloquently about non-attachment yet still seek validation in subtle ways, these are invitations to look deeper. From a psychological standpoint, this aligns with Heinz Kohut's exploration of the false self, an adaptive structure that emerges when the authentic self does not feel emotionally safe or valued. In spiritual communities, the false self can take on a sacred aesthetic, donning mantras and rituals in place of emotional honesty. It can be deeply convincing, both to the individual and to others, because it looks like wisdom. But it's not anchored in wholeness. It's anchored in avoidance. Welwood described this as using absolute truth to dismiss relative truth. For example, saying, "I am not this body," or "all is illusion," when faced with trauma, injustice, or grief. These statements might be metaphysically accurate within certain spiritual systems, but when used defensively, they become tools of denial rather than liberation. Real healing does not require performance, it requires presence, and presence at its core is a willingness to feel, even when it's messy, inconvenient, or unflattering. The false self is not always easy to detect, especially because it is often crafted from beliefs that are partially true. You might genuinely believe in stillness, mindfulness, or compassion. But the key question is whether these values are being expressed from within or layered on top of unresolved patterns. For example, let's say you commit to silence as a spiritual practice. That can be beautiful. But silence becomes avoidance when it's used to suppress grief, guilt, or anger that still needs to be witnessed. Likewise, forgiveness is a sacred path, but it becomes a mask when it's used to prematurely bypass necessary rage or sadness. According to Kohut, the self needs mirroring and attunement in order to form cohesively. If you never experienced those in childhood, your adult self may unconsciously seek them through spiritual performance, hoping that being good, peaceful, or high vibration will finally bring the validation that was once missing. Spiritual bypassing, then, is often a trauma response cloaked in transcendent language. It's a way to create the illusion of integration without engaging the real, embodied process of psychological digestion. And while it may bring temporary relief or even admiration, it prevents the deep contact with self that true healing requires. There's no shame in this. Many people pass through the stage of spiritual identity before arriving at deeper embodiment. The goal isn't to reject your practices, it's to revisit their function in your life. Are they tools for expansion or walls you've built against pain? True healing is not glamorous, marketable, or immediately comfortable. It doesn't always look calm or collected. In fact, it often brings you face to face with parts of yourself you once disowned or buried. And in that confrontation, healing invites you to integrate, not erase, those parts. An embodied spiritual practice brings awareness into the body, not just the mind. It doesn't ask you to transcend your emotions. It asks you to listen to them, to sit with shame without needing to explain it away, to witness fear without immediately trying to transform it into love, to acknowledge anger without rushing to gratitude. Real healing humbles you. It removes the spiritual pedestal and replaces it with humility, honesty, and grounded presence. You start to care less about how you look and more about how you feel, deeply, honestly, somatically. You stop trying to project purity and start welcoming contradiction. You stop aiming to appear wise and start focusing on being whole. You stop speaking about awakening and begin living it, quietly, imperfectly, and sincerely. And in this space, the nervous system begins to settle. The body softens. The need to be impressive dissolves. What remains is truth, and that truth, while simple, is the most sacred ground you can stand on. There is deep courage in choosing truth over performance, especially when your performance has gained you praise, admiration, or belonging. But the authentic path doesn't ask for applause, it asks for integrity. If you sense that your spiritual persona has become a mask, the invitation is not to shame yourself or tear everything down. The invitation is to soften, to ask gently, What have I been afraid to feel? What have I been working so hard to avoid? You may find that your spiritual identity has served you well. It got you through a difficult chapter. It protected your inner world while you rebuilt trust in yourself. That's okay. The question now is whether you're ready to go deeper, beyond the image, beyond the safety, into the honest landscape of your own becoming. Healing is not about appearing elevated. It's about being whole. And wholeness includes your shadow, your mess, your doubt, your body, your grief, your longing, your fear. The moment you release the pressure to be someone spiritual, you begin to encounter the part of you that has always been sacred, not because of how it looks, but because of how it lives.